the three-headed monster. Now, the three-headed monster is what Nazir Razak would say is the three biggest things that's holding back Malaysia from achieving full potential.
Yeah.
The first is identity, or more commonly known in America as identity politics. The second is the unrestrained role of money in politics, which is what we talked about a little bit about earlier on, and also the over-centralization of powers. Now, he did give a solution, right? And again, you see, this is where the respect he has for his father comes in. So, Tun Abdul Razak, during the upheavals in the 60s, right, came up with this thing called the NCC, which is the National, I believe, Consultative Council. Right, so it was established in 1970, and it was an effort, right, to recalibrate the entire political, economic, and social system of the country after the 1969 May 13 riots.
Yes,
which is interesting. It was just 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm going to read quite a few things here, so bear with me. But here's the thing, right? I want to add. Yes. So. He said the NCC cannot clear the way for a national recalibration unless it is confident of tackling the three-headed monster, which is what I mentioned earlier on: identity, money, and of course over-centralization of power. And yeah, so in 1970, right, the NCC made up of 67 people from political parties, communal groups, NGOs, religious groups, professional bodies, and businesses from across society to establish positive and practical guidelines for interracial cooperation and social integration for the growth of a Malaysian identity. So that's the main objective, right? Because if there's a shared common culture, common belief, then it'll be easy. So the NCC endorsed the NEP, the National Economic Policy, to eradicate poverty and to increase the Malay and indigenous share of the economy. Right now, to give some sense, right, to those listening, in the 1970s, I believe the share of the Malay when it comes to economic ability is about 2.5%. It was really low.
Yes.
Today, thanks to the NEP, I think it's somewhere closer to 21%. So
it's like not reached 30, which was the
goal is 30, right? 21%, something like that. So then continuing, right? So limits to public discussions on communally sensitive issues and the Rukun Negara as a set of guiding national principles to help imbue a sense of Malaysian identity. So they didn't really talk about some of the sensitive issues, but certainly there was a discussion going on among these people. So the NCC also laid the ground for the founding of BN, and the council brought Malaysia back from the brink, and its reform underpinned years of peace and stability, albeit at the cost of some limitations to democracy. So the council members were encouraged to debate the most important issues facing the country, aware of the dangers of this absolute power. Abdul Razak wanted to hear criticism and challenge, recognizing that unless issues were aired, it would be impossible for the right decisions to be made. Now continuing, so please bear with me. NCC avoided getting bogged down in small issues, nor did it focus on just one issue. It took a realistic yet ambitious agenda which allowed the different communities to trade off compromises in one area with benefits in another. To put it crudely, the council allowed deals to be done between different communities to create a way forward to which all could sign up. We need to engage in that kind of creative deal making now to reset our course. So the last bit here will be this, right? He likens Malaysia to a bit like Italy in the, I believe, the 18th or the 19th century, right? So Massimo di Azeglio, I'm not sure who he is, an Italian statesman declared, we must have made Italy, because for some context of Italian politics, right, they were very splintered in the boot, right? The Italian boot. We must have made Italy, now we must make Italians. So that is still a work in progress in a nation made up of Venetians, Sicilians, and Romans. Creating a stronger, embracing Malaysian identity is a long cultural work in progress as much as a political one. So thank you for listening to my audiobook. So the NCC, right? What are your thoughts?
I think First is actually the political will to set it up.
Yeah.
And ironically, there is a lot of grassroots organizations that are already standing up to this. Bruce
Yeah.
is one of them. The other one, I can't remember. It was something about a scholar. I'm not too much into politics today because it kind of turned me off.
Turns everybody off.
Yeah,
it turns some people. It either turns you very off or turns you very on.
Yeah.
Depending on who you are.
Yeah, depending on who you are. Most people don't care, right? In the middle, right? And the reason why I say this is because I think a lot of these grassroots organizations actually have specific agendas that they want to address because tackling the big picture requires a lot of political will.
Yeah.
And, once you read that excerpt from the book, MJ, I think at least he's trying to provide options to a solution. Because a lot of people, we end up just complaining and we stop there.
Yeah.
But how do we solve it? How do we move forward? What is amicable to most people? That's always been a question mark, you see. And I think where I would add on my thoughts is that the moment that unbalance of power happens, I think that's where a lot of this political will just get siphoned off. What do I mean by this? How many people within your sampling group understand when they elect a member of parliament, what is the role of the member of parliament? You see where I'm coming from?
They don't know like the whole not the Senate, what's the parliament lah, basically
legislation.
The legislation, yes, correct.
Yes, the legislature. In the States, I mean, I have never studied the States.
You have the Senate and the House of Representatives.
The House of Representatives.
Congress.
You study that in school, you know. I don't know if you remember whether in Form 5 you studied this. Actually, this was only covered in Form 6, Lower 6. It's under Pengajian Am.
Okay.
So you see, from young, right, you have never had the inculcation of the understanding of the system of government.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's why people don't care.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the first thing has to start. And I'll share with you a personal story related to this. I was on a flight from Miri to KL. And the person I was chatting to was actually a lawyer in training. She's doing her LLB. And I was commenting, that was the time of when Tan Sri Abdul Ghani Patayal was actually prosecuting Anwar.
For the
sodomy case.
Or the second sodomy.
The second sodomy, yeah. So I was asking her about her views on the role of an AG and all that, right? And I said that my classmate, actually one of my classmates, his father is actually Tan Sri Steve Shim. Tan Sri Steve Shim is actually, for those of you who don't know the judiciary, he was actually Chief Justice for Sabah Sarawak, which is the third highest, I think. So you got Chief Justice of Malaysia and all that. So I was asked, so for me, I wanted her views as a lawyer, not yet a lawyer, but going to be a lawyer. What were the separation of power, even in judiciary, you know? And I got a blank stare because she couldn't understand the difference in between the AG and the judiciary.
She's in law to make money.
Yeah, so you see where I'm coming from or not? You study these branches of government, the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive.
Yeah.
Only in lower 6. So if you don't do Form 6, you do A-levels, then you don't study this, at all. And yet we have...
And how many people actually remember even if they did?
Yeah. And how many people actually care, you see?
Yeah.
And if that is the case, then what you have is this. You have a big chunk of the population looking at rhetorics of politicians, but not understanding what are the mechanisms of the framework to go about solving it. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So you've got that. What happens is you've got the enlightened or the elite, those people who like KJ go to Oxford, study PPE or that kind of thing, come back, involved in politics, then they understand, right? But if you're just a normal engineer, a normal QS, in life as you go along, you want to have kids, you want to have family. Why do you even care about the system of government? And that's where I feel belies the problem, because this book, most people will read the enlightened ones, right? How many of it will trickle down to a greater population so that the power of the collective is stronger? Yeah, I felt that.
I think that's a very good point. The power of the collective, right?
Yeah.
And it's we were talking about education and all that. And I thought about this, and for those listening, personally, I've not heard this solution that I know it sounds very arrogant, but this solution that I'm proposing, and I don't believe that I'm the only one who believes in this. But here's where I think the issue is with regards to solving the big three monsters of money and all that. I think the problem with Malaysia is that we don't have that united front.
Yes.
Right? We don't have that shared like belief systems about what is like the bare bone
Human
Malaysian.
right, the rights of a citizen in this country.
And also what is a Malaysian, right? Nobody has that.
Identity.
Yeah, everyone has, I'm Chinese, I'm Malay, I'm Indian, I'm whatever, right? And that is important to retain, but underneath that, there needs to be a common understanding of we are Malaysians.
Yes.
And so for me, the question is, how do we achieve that? And I believe to solve the issues of Malaysia requires, there are only idealistic options.
Correct.
There's no
in between or compromise.
Yeah, correct. It's harder. lah. Like compromise would be what we're doing.
Yeah,
That's what
which
we're doing.
is what happened. But he's not. Is it working? I doubt so.
So the first is actually the big mistake by all races is language.
Oh yes.
Because before we even talk, we like to talk about the fancy stuff, right? Especially those who are more English educated and whatnot. Before you even talk about it, how if we cannot talk to each other, like what is the point?
Yes.
So of course the mistake was made during the 80s that they would give the Malay language a certain primacy at the expense of English. If they had maintained parity in terms of the importance, that would be great. And I'm sure you can attest to this.
Oh yes, definitely.
People in the civil servants right after the British rule, right? It doesn't matter what race. They were all excellent in English and they were top quality and everything, right? And today, like even cluster schools, cluster kebangsaan schools, you've got people teachers who cannot converse in English.
You know why I was laughing at MJ? It's like today, right? If we meet a Malay friend who can speak Queen's English, we are shocked.
We'll keep him,
Yeah, okay. It's like, which is sad.
Yeah.
I'm laughing is because it's sad.
Now, that's one area.
Yeah.
So the Chinese, being the second largest in the country, had an opportunity to now say, let's prioritize English the same way Singapore did it. But no, instead, it got pushed into the Chinese language.
The Hua Zong
the vernacular school. And then, of course, the Indians follow suit.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So everyone's moving their own direction. And, you cannot choose Malay as the final medium of exchange. Yes, it should be there. Everybody should learn it, right? Because it is the motherland's language. But if you pick that, then there's going to be a limitation for international competitiveness.
Correct.
And interaction, right?
Correct.
In fact, it's so sad that a lot of our diplomats cannot speak English. I can understand if you are the home minister and you cannot speak English. You are mostly talking to your fellow Malaysians, right? But
or Minister of Rural Development. Okay, I'm fine. Yeah.
But the diplomat, right? Like the ambassador cannot... Isn't that the bare minimum?
Yeah.
And when you put English on top, right, it means that no race has an agenda. The Chinese cannot get the Chinese.
Yes.
So the issue with Chinese is that it's too difficult to learn. Yeah, you can say that China is going up and all that, but to get people to learn Mandarin, even Chinese people, is so difficult already.
Yes.
And of course, with Tamil, there are like hundreds of languages in India anyway, and I think if you ask most Indians, they will prefer to converse in English as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing that we need to do. The second thing that I would propose, and this is probably the hardest to do, is that there be no repercussions for cross marriages, interracial marriages. Because you see, right, what What is a more efficient way to get people to share a common culture and a common belief? Yeah, you can educate, you can put it in your textbooks, you can give talks, you can give TED Talks, you can write books, you can start YouTube channels and do all this. But nothing beats, right, the old school method.
Peranakan.
Yeah.
The Straits people, that's the best example. You come to Sarawak, guys come to Sarawak. I need anyone who listens to this and they've worked, especially West Malaysians, that have come and worked in Sabah or Sarawak. That is a testament of one Malaysia.
Exactly. And I will not dwell too much into what these repercussions are, but if there was a way where all races can marry each other and not have undesirable outcomes immediately, then I think that will solve a lot of problems. Because then now it will remove Malay, Chinese. No, I'm 40% Chinese and 60% Malay. No, I'm 12% Indian and I'm 40% Chinese. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the third one would be, I think this is probably, this is the easiest to execute, but whether people will accept it, the second one, is actually to standardize naming. The same ways what Indonesian Chinese people did. So all of us will have, not necessarily, it will be more like Nusantaran sounding names, right? So imagine, right, if all these three was achieved, then we've got a ground for an NCC, then we've got a ground for common. So now it's you and I talking as people with a very similar mix of race, on a common language. You see, now when Nazir Razak writes a book like that, who reads it? The English educated.
It's all the English educated. Can you imagine a vernacular school person trying to read this?
No, it's gone.
I wish it would be translated, because I felt that this book is not just a testament to the history of corporate culture in Malaysia, but a testament to the problems we're living in Malaysia, right? Because you want to say money politics, or, a lot of people come from one angle, MJ, they say, eliminate corruption. How? You need money to have infrastructure projects. You need money to keep people happy, to keep people sane and all that. I don't think, that's why I said there's no binary answers. I like the three suggestions that you add. I will add on it's hard. I add on a few things that I think one would be simpler. I grew up in a LaSalle school. And I was very lucky. I don't know, I would use the word privilege. I was lucky. It was a public school. But because it was a LaSalle school, it was the cream de la cream of the Sarawak political system, civil service, even business community came from that school. And what we had is you share a common bond. You see, the struggle is this. When you are in your 27, your teenager life, and you come into maturity, working adult, right? There's already a certain bias form. There's, for you to build trust, there's already a wall. But when you grow up as kids, you understand this guy at 6 to 7, you know the nuances, you know his culture, whatever, right? The bond, the trust, no matter what, you look back at your primary school friends, if you had primary school, secondary, all the way, right? That bond will never be lost one, I don't know if you realize that or not.
Yeah, correct.
And I think that is the root of the problem. Earlier I mentioned about schools not educating the three branches of government and the importance of it. I think more importantly is to have a singular schooling system.
No vernacular.
No vernacular. I'm Chinese. I used to be the president of the Malaysian Chinese student body in the Polytech where I studied, and I didn't write a single word of Chinese. And the reason why I guess I was elected was because I was daring enough, very liberal in my words to the seniors and all. That's why they elected me for some sort of a courage. But I find it very sad that even the Chinese have a lot of bias to the Malays. They're all lazy and all that kind of thing. And then here we have the Malay bias towards the Chinese. Why? Because of the separate schooling systems. Can you imagine if we had a singular schooling system?
Yeah.
A common language. I think Bahasa Melayu in Singapore is an official language,
Yeah, it is.
It's an official language.
They just converse in English.
Right? Yeah, they just converse in English, but it's mandatory for you to do Bahasa Melayu, right? And I think with this flip-flop of languages, with this more and more, I see, very sad, segregation. When I was schooling, there were missionary schools and government schools, and the standard was not so separate. And obviously the vernacular. But you see today, you have Malays, Indians, sending their kids to vernacular schools. Why? If they had an option, I'm pretty sure they'll send you to international school. They'll send their kids to international school because they can afford it. Why? Because they know there's a certain standard. There's less racial tonality or bias within that school. Is because everyone wants the best education for the kids. But here you have this separate spending. When I say this, I would say professional spending on creating schooling systems that actually segregate our society. That's where the root cause of the problem is.
Yep.
If you solve the schooling problem, I would dare say 60 to 70% of the problem will be gone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, seriously.
Or maybe we'll have new set of problems, but it wouldn't be the problems we're facing now.
Yes. I mean, you start it at you kind of start at the root cause of it. Once you get that schooling system right, you get the policies of languages right, a lot of these nuances will the upside will be taken care of already.
Yeah.
For sure. I think
Yeah.
anything else, MJ, you have?
There's always more, but we'll leave it for some other time.